Joining us here in San Francisco is Paul Graham, founder of Y-Combinator, a company that helps entrepreneurs take their ideas and make them the next big thing. Y-Combinator has been dubbed the Harvard of Silicon Valley. And welcome back, Paul. Ever since the last time you were on, our fans have been clamoring for another Paul Graham appearance, so it's great to have you back.
See what I can do.
So, given how fast innovation seems to be happening across the country, what do startups these days need to do to have a successful exit, whether it's an IPO or just building a great business?
They have to make something that actually makes people's lives better. Like, it's funny how straightforward it is. People often think that business requires some sort of trickery, that you have to like corner the market in something or something like that. But actually, what you have to do is you have to make people's lives better. And the amount of value that you create is this sort of rectangle, where one side is the number of people, and the other side is how much you make their life better. Big rectangle, big value, you're rich.
When you see companies like Pandora and Groupon, two very different companies, but similar in the sense that they don't have profits, how does that strike you in this environment?
Well, I don't know much about them specifically. I feel like some sort of securities analyst would actually understand better than I would. I haven't looked at their books, you know. I mean, I know Andrew Mason's a really smart guy, right? I know Andrew. He's a smart guy. So if I were betting on Groupon, I wouldn't be looking too closely at the numbers. I would just be like thinking, I like Andrew. He seems like a good guy. It'll probably work.
Over the last few weeks, we've seen Twitter announce a photo service, which then invalidated a number of photo businesses that have built themselves on Twitter. Apple, at the developers conference, announced a whole slew of things that hit at a lot of different startups. How do you advise your companies to work on things that Apple, Facebook, Twitter couldn't just come along and say, we're going to do that now?
You know, actually, the right thing to do in a startup is not worry about it too much. The right thing to do in a startup is just like, you're a mosquito, right? And like, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And you just like zoom along and don't spend your time looking over your shoulder. And like, if you get killed, okay, like you do another startup.
For example, Dropbox, which is a very successful YC startup. But when Apple announced the iCloud, that kind of was a little punch to them, wasn't it?
I don't get the impression they were worried about it. I didn't worry about it. There's only ever been one out of 316 companies we funded. There's only ever been one that was actually killed by a competitor.
But do you think that companies shouldn't depend so much on one particular ecosystem, or is it all about just, as you said in the beginning, making people's lives better?
Just work on making people's lives better. Don't spend your time worrying about like trying to make people's lives better, but also do it in a way that Apple won't do. Who knows what Apple's going to do? You just have to hope that they don't, right? And mostly they won't. Apple can't do 500 different things. So there's a small chance they'll kill you. You just take that risk.
All right, I'm going to bring in Corey Johnson now. I know he's got a lot of questions for you. Corey, go ahead.
I'm supposed to be the bad cop here. Paul, you said only one of your companies was killed by a competitor. Which one?
It was called Kiko, and the founders later went on to do Justin.tv. It was an online calendar. And then Google introduced Google Calendar, and they lost half their users in 1 month.
Wow. Well, so I assume you've had some other companies die. If they weren't killed by competitors, what kills young companies?
They make something that users don't like. They make dog food that dogs do not like to eat. That is the killer of all startups. They build something that users look at and they say, that's what kills you. It's the back button.
Well, I'll talk more about that because I want to know, as an investor, what do you do? Obviously, every company's first iteration is not its best. What do you do to try to, when do you know to fish or cut bait?
Well, the first iteration may not be very good, but as long as you get it out there very quickly, it doesn't matter if it's not great, because you start the conversation with users, and users will say, oh, well, I sort of like this, but I wish you would do such and such, and then you do such and such, and you repeat that process 200 times or so, and then you have something really good.
So back to your thing about this backing a smart guy, backing an Andrew Mason, what if the business model just doesn't make sense? What if it's, as Paul Kudowski said about Groupon on our air, selling $1 for 50 cents makes a really smart guy would know that that'd be very popular, but that's not a great business model.
Are we talking about Groupon specifically? I mean, I think the general
you tell me any company backing a smart guy with a bad idea doesn't make it a good investment.
A smart guy, by definition, will eventually realize that a bad idea is a bad idea and will tweak it until it becomes good. I mean, however, whatever you think of Groupon's current idea, it's a lot better than the idea they started with back when they were The Point.
The Point lost less money.
Yeah, lost perhaps less on lower revenues, right? It just didn't matter. At least Groupon matters.
The point is there are a lot of Go ahead, Corey.
No, sorry. I'm curious about the idea of competition. You have so many people that you've invested in, some of whom compete with each other directly, some of whom compete with each other accidentally. But how do you think the competition can be used as a tool to motivate entrepreneurs?
Honestly, I spend a lot more time telling people to stop thinking about their competitors than I do telling them to, use their competitors to make themselves work harder. People who are good have this inner drive that makes them work hard anyway. I've found the really successful companies, they don't spend a lot of time obsessing about their competitors. It's companies that get old and are starting to suck that are looking over their shoulders, worrying and trying to imitate their competitors.
All right,
really good companies don't.
And you said some of the craziest ideas become the biggest successes.
Right. That's why we look for people. We don't care that much about ideas, right? If the people seem really good, then either the idea is better than it seems, if the people are really good, or maybe the idea is bad, but they'll come up with something else, right?